5 reasons why I left Oregon and moved to Idaho. You're gonna wanna watch this video because I'm gonna share my experience of what it was like for me leaving Oregon and moving to Idaho. And you're gonna hear the reasons I did that, and you might find that those reasons help you. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. My name's Craig Flood, and if you're curious about all things Idaho, what the major cities are like, what it's like living here, what you can do here, and what real estate is like, then I would love to assist you. Be sure to subscribe to my channel because I post content like that each week. In today's video, I'm gonna walk you guys through my journey of why I decided to move my entire family away from Oregon. Specifically, we were living in Portland, Oregon. At the time, we had 4 kids. We just had our 4th, so it was definitely a challenging move. But why we decided to leave all that and move our entire family to Idaho, we specifically chose to land in Boise, Idaho, and I want to bring you along on that journey. I'm going to talk about 5 reasons why we moved. I'm going to talk about things like the weather, living conditions, and if it was conducive for a family or not. I'm also going to touch on neighborhoods and affordability. And then the final thing we'll touch on is the outdoors. Yes, Portland is a beautiful area. You have the coast and the gorge, but there was something that I found was lacking with that, but I found a great solution here in Boise, Idaho. So stay tuned for that last point. Let's talk about the weather. So the weather in Oregon is beautiful in the summertime, and I know a lot of people maybe travel there in the summer and love it, but you do have to get through those winters. I personally grew up in the Pacific Northwest, so I started out in Seattle. My father worked at Boeing, and that was just what life was like. When winter came, it was kind of wet and cloudy all the time and dreary. We didn't really get a ton of snow, so in the wintertime, it wasn't like snow was everywhere and it was sunny and it was beautiful. It was just cold and wet, and you had multiple months of it. In fact, I think a lot of people are just really seasonally depressed in that area. Depressed, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, are seasonally depressed, and I think I was definitely one of them. And so that was one reason why we left Oregon. Now, if I compare that to Idaho, Idaho is lovely. The winters are great. Yes, are they cold? Yes, they're cold, but it is very sunny a lot of the time, and you get snow, and the snow is great because then light reflects off it. It's great, and you have activities that you can go do. I'm going to touch on this later, but one thing I didn't like about Oregon was the fact that you kind of had to drive pretty far to get out into the outdoors to do anything fun, and there was often a lot of traffic associated with that as well. So going back to it, the winters in Oregon were really tough, and a lot of people can't handle them, and I know a lot of people leave the state for those reasons, and I was definitely one of them. Decline in city living conditions. Portland is a lovely city, was a lovely city. I saw Portland change a lot over a decade's time, and it went from being a very kind of fun, creative, kind of do your own thing kind of city to a very do your own thing kind of city in a not so great way. I want to speak just about like the cleanliness of the city, how clean everything is, what the sidewalks were like, what parks were like. I'm a family man. I have 4 kids, and raising a family there was a bit challenging due to the decline of this. You would just have a hard time going downtown and not stepping in trash or people's feces or seeing nudity with homeless people. It became a very unsafe city. I remember one time I was walking through a park with one of my kids, and we're kind of walking the track. And if you are in Portland and you go to a park, you know that the parks are great places for homeless people. So not only do I want to take my kids there, but the homeless guy wants to show up there and do drugs. And we look over, and there's a group of people, and one guy's literally 10 feet from us shooting up drugs in his arm, and another gal sees us, and she feels embarrassed about it, and she's just like, hey, sorry, you know, and it's just like, it just felt like the city had given up, and it felt like the city wasn't doing anything about it. And in fact, as time went on and COVID hit, it was pretty apparent that the city wanted to go a direction that I think a lot of people didn't agree with. And a lot of those people who didn't agree with it ended up leaving. Again, me and my family were kind of a part of that. We just didn't want to go on that ride. And I had to choose between a city that I had lived in and loved for a long time and say, hey, we got to leave this because I love my family and I want to see a better future for us. And again, that's where Idaho comes in, where Idaho has offered us that. I know a lot of people a lot of you Californians, when I talk to you and you travel up here, you are shocked, just like I was when I moved here, of how clean this city is. It was insanely clean. If you go under overpasses, you really expect to see trash and homelessness, and you really just don't. It's just not the norm. So that was a reason why me and my family decided to leave Oregon and move to Idaho. I just wanted to pause for a moment. If you're thinking about moving to Idaho and you are looking for help, don't worry. I know it can seem like a scary process, but the Living in Idaho team would love to help you. We've helped people just like you make that a very, very smooth transition. We get calls, texts, and emails, days, nights, and weekends from people just like you looking for assistance in relocating to Idaho. My contact information is down below, and I would love to chat with you, even if you just have a question of what it's like living here. Education. Education was one of the reasons we also left Idaho. It was one of the things that was like kind of pushing us out. It was hard for us to find a school that we felt safe for our kids to go to. There are schools there that are kind of on the leading edge of experimentation of how to teach children and what education should look like. And if you don't agree with those things, you feel a little bit limited in your options. And again, we were kind of in that category where we would send our kids to school, and some of the things that we saw happening at those schools, we were not on board for. And it felt kind of isolating. You kind of felt like you didn't have many options. And so that was definitely a reason why we were kind of leaning away from Oregon. Fast forward, and now we're in Idaho, and we love the options that we have. We feel like there's a lot of freedom here in Idaho to kind of choose what you want. And there are a lot of public school options and charter school options, and homeschooling is really encouraged. So if you're going that direction, there's some great programs here that do that, and there's some great private options here in the Valley. So schooling was definitely a reason of why we felt Oregon, and specifically Portland, just wasn't going to be a good option for us and our family. Neighborhoods and affordability. This was another reason that we left Oregon. Partly it was the fact of us looking for a new home to purchase. So we had just had our fourth kid. We were ready to move out of our first home, and we were looking for where we wanted to move to. And I know some of you in California can relate to this, but you kind of felt a little priced out of the area. For you to jump up a house, it was quite a drastic increase. And honestly, when looking at the homes, we just weren't too excited about what we would get for the money that we would spend. And we didn't want to go super far into debt because that would just create all sorts of other problems, stress, and other things like that. We didn't want to be house poor. And so it was really challenging to find a place we wanted to live to. We could easily just move further and further out of town, but then your commute just gets longer and longer. And then you're randomly just moving into some neighborhood and moving away from your friends and kind of starting afresh. And so literally that kind of put me in a position where it's like, well, man, if I'm going to consider moving far away out of town, like 30, 45 minutes, an hour, I might as well consider other options. And that's when we started looking at other options. And then that's when Boise, Idaho hit our radar. And we thought, gosh, this is like everything we would want. We could live close to town. We could still get a lot of great amenities. And we wouldn't have to just completely move out deep into suburbia, which is what I didn't want to do at the time. And so that was one of the reasons why we left Oregon, was just because of the housing and the costs, and to move into any kind of neighborhood that we would want to, it just felt unattainable at the time. And again, I have a large family. I got my wife, we have 4 kids. And so we needed to find a house that could suit us. We knew that if we bought another house in Oregon, we'd be committing 7 to 10 years like that. It would just go by in a flash. And for multiple reasons, we were just starting to lean towards the fact of like, man, we really don't want to commit another 10 years to Oregon. The outdoors and outdoor activities. Another reason that Idaho started looking more desirable to our family was because of the access to the outdoors. Oregon, it's funny saying that because Oregon is such a beautiful state. There are so many things. You have the gorge, which is amazing. You have the Oregon coast. Now, I will say I am personally not a huge fan of the Oregon coast. I am if you hit it on like that perfect sunny day where the wind is not whipping through. But typically the Oregon coast is cast over the clouds and cold. The swell is not that great. And it's not like a California coast, which is something completely different. So the Oregon coast was not that appealing to us. And the gorge, yes, it's beautiful, but it was really good for us for like maybe if you wanted to go on a hike. or maybe if you're into kiteboarding or windsurfing. My cousin does that. He loves doing that out in Hood River. But unless those things are like top of mind for you, then again, it's beautiful, but it's like, well, how do you experience that beauty and how do you actually get into it? Then if you wanted to go skiing, you can go up to Mount Hood, but again, it's a really long drive and traffic's horrible and just miserable, especially in winter times, especially if it's like raining and cloudy and you just feel like you're driving around Oregon and it's raining and you have low visibility and you're going to run over a cyclist. Like literally, I often thought that. I'm like, I have to move out of the city before I run over a cyclist that I don't see because the weather's so bad and they're everywhere and they feel like they own the road. So getting to the outdoors was something that I wanted more of in my life. I often found that with the work that I do, I'm often sitting and I wanted to be more active. And so I often found it just wasn't that accessible for us in Portland. Fast forward, now we live in Idaho, specifically live in Boise. Something that I love about Boise is that you have the foothills and they're so easily accessible. It's so easy to get up to them and have fun, or go skiing up at Bogus Basin. Or one of my favorites is jumping into the Boise River, whether your kids want to go for a swim or play or build like a rock dam, or if I want to go out and go fishing, or if we want to go on a bike ride. There's so many things. Across the entire state too, no matter where you live in Idaho, you can pick places where you can be really close to the outdoors, whether it's Idaho Falls, whether it's Coeur d'Alene, and you get some time on the lake. There are so many great places in Idaho that are very conducive for people who want to be closer to the outdoors. Another thing too is that when we lived in Oregon, we would make the trek out to Wyoming to go see Yellowstone, and it was lovely, and we thought it was great. And I had often toyed with the idea of moving to Montana, never Wyoming, but Montana was always intriguing to me. I had lived in Montana years ago, but I really couldn't commit to those cold winters. And so something I loved about leaving Oregon and moving to Idaho is that I didn't have to commit to Montana or Wyoming, but it got me closer to them. So now when we go to Wyoming, it's like 6 or 7 hours. Well, yeah, like 6 or 7 hours for us to get to Yellowstone, which is so much better than the drive from Portland, Oregon. And so that was another reason of why we left Oregon. I'd be curious to know your thoughts. I would love to know if you live in Oregon, why you live there, or if you're considering leaving, what the reasons are that you're considering leaving. Or if you moved here from another state, I'd love to know your reasons for moving to Idaho. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you're looking for help moving to Idaho, I would love to chat with you. My contact information is below. Other than that, I will see you guys in the next video.